If you don't want a divorce, get out of this house right now, all right? These words came suddenly from my husband. Obviously, I was taken aback. He must have been quite confident that I wouldn't file for divorce to go to such lengths to intimidate me. When I couldn't take it anymore, I decided to seek advice from someone else. My name is Anna. I'm a 30-year-old office worker. My husband James and I are about to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. We're still waiting for the blessing of a child, which has led to a constant barrage of questions from my mother-in-law about when she can expect grandchildren. My father-in-law passed away years ago. My mother-in-law lives on the inheritance he left behind. Honestly, I feel on the verge of a nervous breakdown with her constant prodding about grandchildren. Actually, I might already be there. Despite seeing me like this, my husband James doesn't lift a finger to help. In fact, he recently started siding with his mother, blaming me for our troubles. I used to adore him for his kindness when we were dating. But after we got married, his attitude completely changed. Without any consultation, he decided we would live near his childhood home. When James is off from work, I am summoned to his parents' house and made to do housework all day long. Of course, there are no breaks. While I'm busy with chores at his parents' house, the two of them either go out together or stay in watching TV and laughing. I was even yelled at once for making too much noise with the vacuum cleaner. After that, I was forbidden to use it and was told to clean with a broom and a rag instead. Then, my sister-in-law moved back home. She was originally living in a neighboring town, but due to some personality conflict, she had recently moved back. Her return has only added to my burden. She has a 4-year-old daughter and expects me to make her kindergartner's lunch every day. When I tell her that it's impossible because of my job, I get yelled at by my mother-in-law, saying, "Your sister-in-law is dealing with the aftermath of a divorce." My husband says, "Don't you want to be useful to the family?" And my sister-in-law herself says, "It'll be good practice for when you have a child of your own, so you should be thankful." So I end up waking up at 4 a.m. every morning, making my niece's lunchbox and breakfast for my in-laws, then head back to my place, finish my own housework, and go to work. That's the brutal routine I've been forced into. My husband, of course, doesn't lift a finger to help with any household chores. The only time I get to rest is during my break time at work. One day, after living this exhausting routine for a while, my husband dropped a bombshell on me. "Oh, by the way, Anna, you should quit your job. I've talked it over with my mom and sister. You know she's going through a rough time. You understand, right?" "No, I don't get what you're saying." "Listen, I mean quit your job and take care of the house," he snapped at me before storming off to take a bath. I couldn't see the connection between my sister-in-law's divorce and me quitting my job. My husband is stuck in a dead-end job, and there are months. When I earn more than him, does he really think he'd live off his salary alone? Neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law work. I can't understand why they can't handle the housework. Feeling like I couldn't handle any more of this, I grabbed my car keys and drove off to one place that came to mind. That place was my childhood home, a bit far from the apartment we live in now. My parents had moved overseas, and no one currently lived there. Because my parents are the worrying type, I couldn't bring myself to talk to them about the matter. Whenever something unpleasant happened, I'd come here. This is my home, filled with precious memories. As I was lost in these thoughts, my phone rang. It was my husband. "Hey, I just got to the bath and you're gone. Are you back at your parents' place again?" "Yes, so what? Could you stop running back home every time something goes wrong?" His words simply didn't resonate. "I'll be working from here for a while. And no, I won't go to your parents' house either." Defeated by his forcefulness, I returned to our house. Afterwards, I quit my beloved job in the fashion industry. My clueless coworkers speculated I might be pregnant. I was given no free time, made to manage the household all day. Even when I caught a cold and ran a high fever, no one seemed to care. I had become a servant in this house, a slave to put it bluntly. However, one day amidst this lifestyle, something happened. Guess what? My sister-in-law was getting remarried. Moreover, her fiancé was an executive at a major corporation, earning a substantial income. It was quite a shock. My sister-in-law isn't exactly a beauty, and her personality leaves a lot to be desired. I understood everyone has different tastes, and there are all sorts of people out there. The entire in-law family was celebrating, shouting about how she was marrying into money. My sister-in-law, full of pride, showed me a photo of the man. "Huh, this man," I thought, looking at the photo. When my husband said something unbelievable. Because of this, Anna, your parents' house will become my sister's family place. I was stunned. Wait a minute. That house is what my parents left for me. It's not for you to decide. The whole family has decided. You, who lives off my money, don't have a say in this, he retorted. Was the person standing in front of me a devil in human skin? That house was left for me by my father, a place for me to live if I ever had children. James should know this. Why can he act so selfishly? My heart was at its limit. As if to add insult to injury, my mother-in-law said, "You can't even give us a grandchild. Can't you be useful around the house for once?" There was no one on my side in this house. I returned home, packed a few belongings, and headed to my parents' house. I made a firm decision in my heart. I would never go back. A few days later, having received no calls from my husband, I thought he might have reconsidered. Then, suddenly, the doorbell rang. Standing there were my husband and sister-in-law. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We thought we should take a look around," my sister-in-law said, barging in. Despite my pleas for them to stop, they ignored me, snooping around the house, treating me as if I was invisible. "This house is pretty nice too. Good for you, Anna," my sister-in-law remarked. "And when do you plan to move out of this house, Anna?" "My sister's wedding is coming up soon." "Get it together," my husband said, unchanged as I stayed silent. My husband added, "If you don't want to get divorced, leave now." Confident that I wouldn't divorce him, my husband was grinning with my sister-in-law looking my way. "Got it," I said. Once I confirmed, my husband seemed pleased, saying it's all he wanted to hear. Apparently, under the guise of celebrating my sister-in-law's wedding, they are planning a long family-only trip starting tomorrow. Naturally, I'm not included in this little escapade. My husband told me to pack up and leave by the time they get back. Then, he and my sister-in-law left with an excited air about them, watching their backs. 2 weeks later, the day for my in-laws to return from their trip arrived, and my phone began ringing incessantly. The caller was my husband, with calls also from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law mixed in. Unable to ignore the constant noise any longer, I finally answered the call. "Hey Anna, where the hell are you?" my husband demanded. "I'm at home," I replied. "You're lying. You're not at the apartment or at your parents' place." "And what's the meaning of this? Your family house has a for sale sign." "Yes, I put it up for sale." "What are you talking about?" he asked, clearly caught off guard. "Well, after your mockery, I gave it some thought. The house you're living in now just seems so dirty to me. I prefer cleanliness. After all, I'm divorcing you." "Don't mess with me," my husband yelled. That was going to be my line. "Let's let our lawyers handle it from here." With that, I hung up on him while he was still shouting. On the day my husband and sister-in-law returned, I had already been in touch with a certain person, a friend of my father's who runs a real estate company. Though I had no prior experience selling houses, he offered me guidance and we managed to strike a good deal. As a side note, the apartment we had been living in was in my name since my husband couldn't pass the screening process. I had no intention of staying there, so I canceled the lease while they were away and sent all of my husband's belongings to his parents' house, cash on delivery. Even after that, I continued to receive calls from my in-laws, which I completely ignored. I recorded all the unpleasant messages they left on my voicemail. According to my lawyer, my husband was hesitant, even though he initially wanted a divorce. It seemed he was reluctant to lose his maid. I anticipated a lengthy battle. But then my husband suddenly agreed to divorce. My lawyer told me that my husband, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law abruptly showed up at his office, insisting that he divorce me and process it quickly. My husband had been wavering on the divorce, but my mother-in-law convinced him that since my sister-in-law's new husband was wealthy, they could afford to hire a new housekeeper and get rid of me, the barren wife, and find a younger, newer spouse. With that, my husband agreed to the divorce. Moreover, they offered to pay a small settlement on the condition that I would not get involved with them any longer. I thought that was supposed to be my line, but I decided to accept what was offered. Not long after, my sister-in-law got remarried. For a while after that, life was quiet. Taking care of myself was so much easier than I thought. I deeply regretted not divorcing sooner. Well, I'm finally free, time to enjoy my new life. Just as I was beginning to embrace this thought, an incident happened out of nowhere. My in-laws showed up at my new home. The moment I opened the door, they barged in, and my ex-husband demanded, "We need to talk. Sit down." Despite wondering who they thought they were, I took a seat. Then he said, "Come back home. We forgive you." Unable to close my gaping mouth, I answered, "Excuse me?" I wanted them to leave immediately, so I teased, "Oh, are you talking about your sister's husband? Has he disappeared?" The three of them widened their eyes as if to say, "Why do you know about that?" and stared at me. "What do you know?" "Something. After we registered our marriage, he suddenly disappeared. We can't contact him," my mother-in-law added, with a hint of excitement. "On top of that, he ran off with her family's fortune." "Was this your doing? You've brought us such terrible fortune, daughter-in-law." She looked as if she would attack me at any moment. Tired of their baseless accusations, I decided it was time to set the record straight. I decided to reveal a truth to them. "Wow, I didn't realize your sister liked hamburgers so much." "What are you talking about? Hamburgers all of a sudden? Don't you know your sister's husband isn't some executive at a major company? He's just a part-timer at a hamburger shop." The sister-in-law froze, rendered speechless. I continued my story. In my single days, my friend and I loved visiting different hamburger shops. There was one favorite shop where a certain employee always made mistakes and got yelled at by the manager. That man happened to be your sister-in-law's husband. Once I started dating my husband, he told me no more hamburgers, so I gave up my hobby. When your sister-in-law proudly showed me her husband's photo, I recognized him but decided it wasn't my place to interfere and stayed silent. When I showed her the shop's homepage as proof, she stared intently at her husband's picture in the background. By the way, I visited the shop recently with a friend, but her husband was no longer there. He probably left town. That's marriage fraud. It seems that's what they call it." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said. The mother-in-law, who had been silent, interjected, "You knew and you didn't tell us? We took care of you for years, even though you couldn't have children. You owe us." At her nonsensical rant, I decided to reveal another truth I had been keeping. "First of all, I'm not the reason we couldn't have kids. Maybe my ex-husband can explain that to you." The mother-in-law looked at her son in shock, and he guiltily lowered his gaze. "When we couldn't conceive after our marriage, we decided to get tested at your insistence. The doctor confirmed there was nothing wrong with me, but my husband had a very low sperm count. The reason we couldn't have children was because of him." When the mother-in-law asked about the test results, my husband instantly lied, claiming I was the problem. I was angry, but they just said nonsensical things like "you have to support your husband." Refusing to face the truth, my ex-husband joined forces with my mother-in-law, pinning all the blame on me. In the end, he admitted, "Look, I admit I was wrong. Once the house sells, we'll get a good chunk of money. Let's all live happily as a family again." "Well, we've been through a lot, but let's get along from now on," my mother-in-law chimed in. At the end of the day, I realized they probably came here today with the intention of getting their hands on my money. What a disgusting lot. "No chance I'm getting back together with you, and I don't consider any of you family," I declared. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband retorted, "Getting a little big for your boots now, aren't you? I know even if you sold the house, you hardly have any savings. How do you plan to survive?" It seemed he had sneaked a peek at my bank account during my single days, and now he had this smug look on his face, as if to say, "Now that you know, do as you're told." To poke fun at my situation, the three of them were smirking at me, so I decided to enlighten them with a little truth. Sure, my savings aren't that much, as I've told you, but instead, I've invested in stocks, enough to live without working for the next few years at least. Their faces looked like they wanted to say, "No way," as they stared at me. Actually, since I was a child, my father was interested in stocks and investments. He had a knack for foreseeing things, and I inherited those skills and built up a decent amount of wealth. The money that supported my parents' move abroad was all from those successful investments, of course. I had kept this secret from my money-grubbing ex-family. Seeing their disappointed faces, I asked, "You can leave now." "Oh, what was it again?" "It's in our divorce conditions. If we approach each other without reason in the future, either party will have to pay a penalty. Are you going to pay, or should I call the police for trespassing?" The word police scared them off, and they left in a hurry. I immediately consulted my lawyer about the day's events and was told to contact him if the ex-family tried to get close again. As expected, once they knew I had assets, my ex-husband sent me a ton of messages begging to reconcile. Nostalgic photos of places we'd been on dates, creepy messages like "I'm here right now thinking about those days" arrived almost daily. I thought about blocking him but kept everything as evidence just in case. And yes, I wondered how he managed to text me all day while supposedly working, but I didn't really care. But when he started trying to contact my friends, I decided enough was enough and sent him a message. "I'll go to the police if this continues." I sent him a photo of our divorce agreement and the nearest police station along with the message. After that, the messages stopped and I never heard from my ex-husband again. I thanked my lawyer and he dropped a bombshell. Apparently, my ex-husband planned to live off his sister's new husband and had quit his job when she remarried. He was a fool for leaving a decent job at a decent company. "You asked for the documents. They should be arriving soon," I told my lawyer. I had placed another request with a lawyer separately from this matter. Soon after we were married, I thought something was off. My precious personal belongings were slowly disappearing. First, it was a necklace that I bought myself when I was single. Then a fountain pen my parents had given me as a job starting present. Bags, rings, and above all, the fountain pen were something I cherished greatly. When I talked to my husband about it, he yelled, "Don't worry about losing things." Suspicious, I installed a surveillance camera without telling my husband. What it captured was my husband and mother-in-law rummaging through my closet grinning. Once my sister-in-law moved back in, the footage showed 3 people instead of 2. Taking advantage of my silence, their actions escalated. They were selling my personal belongings surreptitiously for money, fueling their actions. They probably saw the balance in my bank book at that time. It continued until the divorce, so I collected plenty of physical evidence, just as they thought I wouldn't claim anything. I filed for damages and compensation for emotional distress due to their actions. They must be panicking right now, but it's their own doing. As for what happened to the 3 of them, my sister-in-law's ex-husband found out about this incident, and it seems he took custody of their daughter. Seeing how my sister-in-law didn't seem to care for her daughter, I felt relieved. Just a while ago, I saw the daughter-in-law with her ex-husband happily holding hands and shopping. She had a happy smile on her face, something I never saw when she was at my in-laws. The 3 of them, who wanted to live comfortably, apparently applied for welfare, but they were naturally refused as they were healthy and nothing else. As for my husband, his pride kept him from finding another job. Eventually, he went to his old workplace and begged on his knees, but they had been hoping for him to quit and ended up calling the police, which he hated. He had to work, but it seems he could only find day labor jobs. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law had to pay me compensation, so they both started part-time jobs at a nearby supermarket. But the 2 of them, who had hardly worked before, are struggling with the unfamiliar work. Maybe it's a coincidence, but since they started, the supermarket sales have dropped significantly. They got quite a strong nickname, the plague-bringing mother and daughter. By the way, the marriage camera is still at large. I thought they owned the house they were living in, but it was actually a rental. Unable to pay the rent, the 3 of them moved to a rundown apartment that was infamous in the neighborhood. Their living is hand-to-mouth, and it seems they're always fighting. The other day, the police were called because their fighting was too loud. As for me, thanks to their help, I sold the house and used the money as capital to start a new apparel company with a colleague from my old job. Recently, we've been gaining more customers and even featured in magazines and TV. Being able to return to the job I love is the happiest thing for me. Oh, and there's one more thing. I've met a man through work, and we're getting married. His parents and siblings are very kind, and they've been treating me very well. What's more, we're expecting a baby, and I'll be the mother I've always dreamed of being. Next year, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life right now.